Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan, the second one of today, and might not be the last, okay? And the topic of this one is me looking at and reasons why and how to fix the fact that Scotland is broken, okay? Now, if you need any justification that Scotland is broken, then I would suggest you've just been closing your eyes, okay? And the reason that you might still not believe Scotland is broken, and it's actually Scottish people's fault, by the way, is that you probably have been buying into this narrative that we've heard for 17 years from the Scottish National Party while governing Scotland, that anything that's wrong with Scotland is everybody else's fault. And if you need to look for evidence of that, let's just consider any time there's anything wrong with the country, it's Westminster's fault, Brexit's fault, or Tories' fault. And the Tory bit, that will just change to Labour very soon, right? And that justifies everything in the eyes of the crackpots, right? Because they ignore the fact that we have a lower life expectancy now than we did 17 years ago when the Nats took power. And if you want to accept that that's somebody else's fault, then you're insane, okay? If you want to ignore the fact that we've got the worst drugs deaths per head of capita in the whole of Europe, and you want to try and justify that or ignore it, you're barking mad, right? And if you want to justify that by saying, but we don't have the powers to control drugs in Scotland, yes, you do. And if you want proof of that, Google Nicola Sturgeon talking about drug deaths in Scotland and saying we took our eye off the ball. I'm sure that's comforting to hear for the many people out there, the many Scottish people who have been affected by the death of someone to drugs. You know, the mothers, the brothers, the sisters, the children of people who have died due to drug abuse. They'll be quite happy and comforted by the words of Nicola Sturgeon saying, we took our eye off the ball, right? So we just need to accept that it is our fault. No, I'm not going to sit and start doing a whole 10-minute moan on the blame culture of whose fault it is, because I strongly believe that when you have a problem, you can do one of two things. First, you can either apportion blame or sort the job out. I would prefer as now, we don't need to apportion blame. We know where that lies. Or you're so much involved with the cult of the SNP that you'll not accept whose fault it is, right? So there's no point in us debating that, right? But what is worth looking at is how do we make it better? How do we make Scotland a better country than it is just now? A country destroyed by half-wits, right? Well, it's tough, but it's no difficult, right? How we sort it out is actually very easy to figure out, but it is a bit difficult to action. And that means that we have to take responsibility. And we need to change from being a load of people sitting around a table hoping that the light will turn on, and actually somebody needs to get up off their arse and go and throw the switch to get the light to come on. The sitting down, holding hands, hoping that this thing will change isn't working. We need to stand up and get up off our arse and do something about it. Now, we could have a cop-out and say, well, we'll just change the government because that'll change everything and make everything better. Well, let's look at Westminster, because the whole UK was sick of the Tories and their incompetence in government. And what we've done is we've changed it for a Labour Party, who will be equally as incompetent as their predecessors. We just need time to prove that, right? They will inevitably upset people as they start to govern. So that isn't the answer. And if we keep doing, my whole life, Westminster, for example, has just changed hands. Labour's had a wee shot, made an arse of it. Tories had a wee shot, made an arse of it. Labour's had a wee shot, made an arse of it. Tories had a wee shot, made an arse of it. And now it's Labour's turn now to eventually make an arse of it, right? And we've actually proven that changing one rosette for another isn't a fantastic thing by what the nation didn't do on Thursday night and Friday morning. And that is, they didn't celebrate. Now, you consider what happened in that election. The United Kingdom as a nation had enough of a Tory government and decided to overthrow them, and done so in massive numbers. They gave Labour a landslide. Where were the street celebrations? Because if we had suddenly put the United Kingdom onto a sure footing of sense and common sense and logic, there would have been street parties up and down. You wouldn't have been able to get on a motorway for cars taken to the streets with flags, tooting their horns, saying, yes, viva the revolution, right? The reason that didn't happen was the United Kingdom electorate did send out a big, massive message that we didn't want Tories. But nobody was dancing in the streets because we replaced them with Labour. We were just sitting in the houses going, that's finished. Let's hope the next mob just had a wee bit less shite. Right? That's what happened. So, to contemplate what's going to happen or what we should do going into the Holyrood elections, which could potentially be 18 months, 2 years away, if the plan of the Scottish people is to cross our fingers and hope we get a change of government, that won't necessarily change a thing, because we'll just replicate what we've just done in Westminster. So what can the Scottish people do? Well, the Scottish people can stand up and take responsibility. Scottish people can join newer or fresher parties or smaller parties. Scottish people can stand as independents against these cranks within parties. And I say that generalising, right? I know because I've spoke to people in many parties, across the spectrum of parties. And there are good people in almost every party, if not every party. But they're the minority. The majority that are into party politics see it as a vehicle for an easier way to get them in to their 91 grand a year job if they get a seat in Westminster, or their 72 grand a year job if they get a seat in Holyrood, right? And unfortunately, a lot of these people that are bampots now, politicians, started their journey with wholesome intentions. But they get caught up in this whole nonsense of party politics. Now, I'll give you a great example of what good looks like, regardless of his politics. And that is Lee Anderson. Lee Anderson's a miner, a working guy that got attracted to politics and get right in about it. And when he stands up in Westminster, whatever rosette he's got on at the time, and he tells you what he thinks, it might not match your own opinion, but you know that his opinion is based on experience and living life as a normal working man. And I would love a parliament full of Lee Andersons. Whether that parliament's in Westminster or Holyrood, I think that's no a bad thing, right? And I'm not saying that we can do in one fell swoop of an election in Holyrood, whack out every single politician and career politician that's in there. And that isn't actually what we need, because there are some good ones, right? But what we could be doing with is giving us at least a hung minority or coalition government, right? And in an arena called the Parliament, which has got maybe a third of those people, normal people that know that the decisions made can have dire consequences to those outside Parliament. You know, the normal working people, the vast majority of the 5.5 million Scottish people that live in Scotland, right? So that's what we can do. We can stop the nonsense, right? And weed out the incompetence by doing something about it. Sitting in my arse, holding hands, wishing that it will just go away, will not make it go away. We need to stand up. And every single Scottish person with the ability to vote is allowed the ability to stand as a candidate. Now, I know fine well that lots of people out there say, well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't see myself standing up in a forum like Parliament and making a difference. You can still make a difference, because you can help the people that can. So if you know somebody in your own community, your own friends, your own workplace, they would make a bloody good politician and not an arsewipe that's just in it for the dough, then speak to them, encourage them, tell them that if they do it, regardless of whether they pick a party rosette or want to stand as an independent, that you will help them and you'll help spread their word and you'll help spread the word of all these people who are non-politicians that should actually have a wee 5 years of running our country. Because I tell you what these people would do. These people would stop the idiots getting away with the nonsense they do in parliaments when they stand up and talk nonsense about nonsense and they don't answer simple, straight questions. And you ask them what time it is and they start talking about that's a debate we'll need to have later on, that's not something I can make a decision on right now, and try and justify why they can't answer simple questions. That would be one thing that would benefit with having a parliament with loads of normal people who won't accept nonsense. The other thing normal people would do is they would go in there and say, hold on a minute, are we spending Scottish people's money wisely? And consider looking at every penny that's spent from Holyrood out of the Scottish people's purse. And instead of saying, you know what, we need more money for roads and we need more money for health and we need more money for education, and all they do to raise that money is taxes more, whether that's our income tax, where we pay higher bands than anywhere else in the UK, or fizzy drinks tax, or LEZ tax, all these stealth taxes, because that's where they normally get the money. Normal people would be able to sit down with common sense and logic and look at all the money we do spend, the billions of pounds a year, and identify things that we spend that we don't need to spend on. And instead of going and charging the people out their pocket and their hard-earned wages to stack up stuff that's underfunding or needing more money, then we'll create it from within. Take the buses, for example. We've given free bus passes to teenagers. Wholesome, I assume, but a bribe nonetheless. In reality, instead of encouraging our kids to visit museums and art galleries and libraries, the reality is we've just increased their range of the Ned culture, because there's more Neds jumping in buses than there is folk jumping, kids jumping in buses to go to like museums and stuff, right? So the thing doesn't work. Now, if we want to abolish that and come up with a scheme where we can return the £2.50 that it costs somebody to go to an art gallery or museum or whatever else other good, wholesome activity they want to deal in, we would save about £300 million per year. Now, if we found three things that we could save similar money, there's £1 billion right off. £1 billion that we could then spend on things that we do need, instead of putting up taxes in some description, stealth or otherwise. Now, normal people will do that because they care. They don't care about what's going to happen in 5 years, and they don't just care when they get voted in and just care when they might get voted out, where they suddenly become, your normal politician, suddenly become all conscientious, right, and start wanting to look after folk in their community. Normal people are quite happy to do that all the time. So, that's what we can do. That's what we can do as Scottish people. I'm going to do it. And if you think about it logically, I should be going and doing it if I was politically minded and tell nobody else to do it to try and make the job a wee bit easier for me being successful and try to get into Holyrood. I'm not doing that. I'm trying to encourage hundreds of people to do what I want to do. And that is go in here and sort the job out. Banish the politician. Not that's different for banishing all MSPs, because there's some MSPs across all the parties that do good work. I've spoke to some of them. I've listened to some of them. I've watched them at debates, right? But the vast majority are crackpots that are only there because it's probably the only way they could get to earn £72,000 a year plus expenses, right? And what we need is a parliament full of people that remind themselves every day when they turn up for their work to pick up their 72 grand a year plus the expenses, that they are there as servants of the Scottish people, not leaders of the Scottish people. Their job is to serve the Scottish people as best they can. And very, very few parliamentarians remember that every day. They remember it when the voting's coming up. Yeah, they all manage to get into Parliament and start getting it round their communities with their constituency meetings and try to help the old ones and the frail and all that when it comes voting time. There's very, very few, but there are some that do that all the time. They deserve their seats. But see the cranks? They deserve at least a bit of competition for their seats. And I hope that many Scottish people consider doing so. you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please subscribe. And most important thing of all, unless you're one of these politicians that don't actually care about anybody other than themselves, everybody else, have a great day. Goodbye now.